my Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you for pardon of my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, St. Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. I remember hearing a radio broadcast a few years ago where someone was speaking about Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Jonathan Sacks was a highly respected author and teacher, as well as being the chief rabbi in the United Kingdom between about 1991 and 2013. The broadcaster was recalling a conversation in which Rabbi Sacks had asked a Protestant pastor what he thought the three most extraordinary words of Jesus were. And the pastor was a bit stumped. He didn't really know what to say. And so the chief rabbi responded with these words, "But I say. But I say." Well, we might think to ourselves, what's so extraordinary about that? They are three words which don't really mean much by themselves. But for a Jewish reader of the Gospels, they are quite revolutionary. According to Sacks, there is no other example from this period of time of a rabbi using the words, "You have heard that it was said, but I say." It's worth reminding ourselves of the times when Jesus uses this expression. You have heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. You have heard that it was said, "You shall love your neighbour and hate your enemy." But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And in today's Gospel we hear, you have heard that it was said to the men of old, "You shall not kill, and whoever kills shall be liable to judgment." But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be liable to judgment. The reason that these words, "but I say," were so revolutionary is because no Jewish teacher would ever have spoken on his own authority, particularly when that authority claimed to supersede the words of Moses, the greatest of all the prophets. And yet here we see Jesus in effect amending the law, or rather completing it, and drawing it to its logical conclusion. By speaking in his own name rather than in the name of another, Jesus is proclaiming his superiority even to Moses, and thus revealing his divinity. With those simple words, "But I say," Jesus is showing himself to be not just the interpreter of the law, but the law itself. He is, if you like, the stone tablets of the law made flesh. And as such, he teaches with an authority which astonishes his hearers. It's fascinating how a Jewish commentator like Jonathan Sacks immediately picks up on this detail in the Gospel. Our familiarity with the text can numb us to the full force of what is being said. But for those who are truly listening, there is no doubt about what is happening. Jesus is doing nothing less than speaking as God. Well, Lord, this gives us a glimpse into what the Gospel writers mean when they state that you taught them as one who had authority. This isn't just about being good with words or producing polished sermons. You were different from other teachers, Jesus, because of who you are, the Word made flesh. And the astonishment of your hearers boils down to the fact that they could sense this without perhaps being able to fully articulate what was going on. There is a place in every human heart that instinctively knows what the truth looks like. We are spiritual as well as physical beings. There is something in us that is hardwired to seek God. Of course, many people look for him in all the wrong places, and consequently that inner voice becomes diminished. But it never completely disappears. God is seeking us out even when we are going in the opposite direction. And so even a certain hostility towards the faith can conceal the flicker of an idea that maybe, just maybe, there is some truth to be discovered here. This goes a long way towards explaining the energy with which people either love or oppose the Catholic Church. Like Christ himself, the Church speaks with authority. Jesus invested the apostles with the power to speak and act in his name. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained. And this authority is continued in an unbroken chain down to the present day, so that when the Catholic Church speaks definitively concerning faith and morals, she is speaking with the voice of Christ himself. He who hears you hears me, and he who rejects you rejects me. It's possible to feel a bit alarmed about what Jesus is saying with that authority today. Whoever is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says "you fool" will be liable to the hell of fire. Which one of us has not, at some point at least, looked upon someone as a fool, even if only in our thoughts? Well, this is where it can be useful to be familiar with the original biblical languages, because in the original Aramaic, the word translated as fool is much stronger. It was used to indicate utter contempt, so much so that the person using this word would spit on the ground as it was being uttered. It was to see the person as being less than human. And so we can see that this is no way to treat a brother, made in the image and likeness of God. And this serious breach of charity is dealt with by Jesus with the severity that it deserves. Such blind and irrational rage will be punished with hellfire. The strong language that Jesus uses in this passage and the terrible consequences that he points to for failing to exercise charity shows us just how important loving our neighbour is in the Christian life. And so we have to be very aware of things like gossiping and backbiting and calumny, anything we do which can damage the reputation of another person. The idea of loving one's enemies is probably the most challenging thing Jesus asked us to do. It's so alien to our human way of thinking that it bears all the hallmarks of the heart of God himself. When we are loving to those who do not love us, then we are acting in a way which is most like God. And of course we cannot do this on our own or from our own strength. We need God to work through us. We need to pray for those who we feel hostile to. We need the help of Our Lady and all the saints. Perhaps this is another challenge for us this Lent, but one that is worth working at, so that we can conform our hearts and our minds to that of God himself. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you have communicated to me in this time of prayer. I ask your help to put them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, St. Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.